Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It's your boy B-Matt. Today, I want to talk about something that I find myself kind of explaining to people a lot. I know there's been a few sales on the game, so probably a lot of new players coming in, and obviously I don't want to discourage people, but what we're going to talk about today is how capping an objective actually works. I find myself explaining this a lot more frequently in the middle of matches and such when people have maybe incorrect assumptions on how capping actually works. So if you're tired of not knowing how to cap, or you're having the same issues I am, where I'm constantly explaining to people how to do things, feel free to, share this video or, use the knowledge hopefully you gain from this video to help other people out. So real quick, let me explain how capping in the map works. So to understand how capping works, we first have to talk about how the map works. So using this, trusty map on Strat Sketch, I'm going to show you how the map itself kind of breaks down. So in this example, we're using Carentan. As you guys notice, Carentan is one of those maps that's wider than it is tall. Some maps like Saint Marie du Mont, maybe Purple Heart Lane, for all of you like masochists out there, you'll notice those maps are taller than they are wide. So what that means is a map is always going to be 2,000 meters by 1,200 meters, whether that be 2,000 meters wide, 1,200 meters tall, or 2,000 meters tall, 1,200 meters wide. And how we're able to know that is an individual grid square. So like, let's say we zoom in up yonder just to show you what I'm talking about. So this grid square right here is 200 by 200. Okay. Now, the map itself is 10 of these grid squares long by 6 of these grid squares tall. So that's where we get that 2,000 by 1,200 meter, measurement from. So what we get from that, the map is broken up into 5 sectors. So there's always going to be 5 caps anytime you load into a map. So in this case, we're the Americans here, okay? This first part right here, this is the first sector. This is known as your HQ sector. So that being said, it is 2 grid squares. Okay, of course, the American cap points kind of favor the West in this or the East in this situation. But this is the sector that your HQ is in, hence the HQ emblems, and of course the very first point. Then from there, your second sector. Okay, so the first one that comes out of HQ is, of course, like I said, another 2 sectors wide, plus however the map tall in this case, while in other things it's, 2 sectors tall and however wide the map is wide. Now, in the middle, you have your neutral sector, okay? Of course, this is 2 grid squares wide, and then from there, it's the enemy's territory. So these 2 grid sectors and these 2 grid squares. So when you break down the map, you have 5 sectors, okay? Now, in order to win a game, you have to have, now this is just standard warfare mode. To win a game, you have to have more sectors controlled than the enemy. So, for instance, if we cap, this middle sector, okay, and the match ends and it's kind of looking like this on the map. Of course, in the game it's actually blue, not green for friendly territory. If we have it like this, and by the time the match ends, then the Americans will win 3-2. While if the Germans had that part of the map captured, they would win 3-2. Or if we want to cap this sector as well, like let's say we push out and cap this part, then we would win the game 4-1. Now, that's breaking down the game, just by sectors. Now, where capping comes in, okay, so let's get rid of everything here. Let's say the grid square that's neutral in the middle, like what we're going to show you in the actual example, is canal crossing. So how to actually cap the objective, which then will give your team the sector, okay? All 4 of these grid squares that are, around the point. So figuring out what sector we're in. So we're in the middle sector, okay? The 4 grid squares that correspond with the cap point, that goes towards cap progress. So in this case with canal crossing, E and F, 3 and 4. Okay, so look at my map, I get that information. Okay. These 4 grid squares all count towards cap progress. So, if we have friendly units, interdispersed throughout canal crossing, and we have more than what the enemy has, then more than likely we're going to cap that point. Now, that all kind of changes a little bit, being inside of the circle compared to outside of the circle. But let's hop on to the actual map itself so I can show you what I'm talking about. So, as you guys can see, now that we're on the actual map itself, you can see that I'm getting ready to start capping canal crossing. Now, as I said before, once I cross this line and I am within the 4 grid squares that are around canal crossing, you guys can see that I am starting cap progress. So now the meter is starting to fill blue. Now, since I am within the 4 grid squares, I count as 1 player. And this goes for anybody within the 4 grid squares. Okay, if you are within that, you count as 1 player. Capture progress will start whenever the amount of guys that you have inside of that capture point, or inside of the 4 grid squares around it, exceeds that of the enemy. So right now, I am just 1 guy. I am just in a server totally by myself. There is no one here to contest me, so as soon as I crossed that line, I started to cap the point, because I am, counting as 1 capping power compared to 0. Now, with the strong point in the middle of the point, the strong point in the middle of the 4 grid squares, sometimes it's a little offset. That black circle, when you're in warfare mode, when someone is inside of that circle, they no longer count as 1 player, they count as 3. Now, as you guys can see, there's a little chevron, like right in the center of the screen, like where it says strong point. That's how you know that you're inside of the strong point and you are now counting as 3 players. Now, if you see 1 chevron, that is 1 to 14. So that means there's 1 to 14 people potentially, or 1 to 14 capping power within the point or within the 4 grid squares. 2 chevrons, like you'll see 2 chevrons right next to strong point, means that there's anywhere from 15 to 29. And if you see 3 chevrons, that means that it's over 30. So granted, that does scale with people being in the strong point versus people being in the 4 grid squares, meaning if you're in the grid squares, you count as 1. If you're in the strong point, you count as 3. But if you are in your own strong point and you see chevrons, that's usually a good indicator of how many people are within, the capture zone. You don't have to be within the strong point to actually count towards capture progress. Now, this is in warfare mode. Of course, this does change in offensive mode, which we will cover right now. All right, so here's an example of how this works in offensive mode. So, as you can see, I am definitely well within the 4 capture grid squares that would be capping this point in warfare. But now that I'm in offensive, I am literally on the edge of the capture point, the strong point itself. But I do not start getting capture progress until I actually enter the point, the strong point itself. That is how offensive works. Now, of course, in offensive, you have just 1 minute you need to capture something compared to 2 minutes in warfare. But as you guys can see, I have to be firmly within the strong point itself to actually count towards capture progress, with me being the offensive team, the team that is attacking. Now, as you can see, as soon as I step out of the point, like literally as soon as I step out of the strong point, I am no longer counting towards capture progress. Like, as you can see, I step out, I have nothing. So keep that in mind, guys. Pay attention to what game mode you are in. The capping rules are a little bit different between both of the different game modes that this game offers. So in warfare, you just have to be in the 4 grid squares. Plus, obviously, being in the strong point, you count as a little more. While in offensive mode, you have to be within the strong point in order to have any capture progress whatsoever. So I hope you guys learned something today. Hopefully I was able to teach you guys a thing or two. If there's people out there that maybe have questions about how this game works, or are just new players altogether, feel free to share this video with them. If you found this thing very helpful, maybe leave a like, maybe subscribe. Obviously sometimes I post hella loose content, sometimes I wait a while, sometimes it's immediate. So, either ways, thank you guys for checking this out. Hopefully I helped you guys out. If you are interested in a realism unit, of course, I am Captain Matthews with the 10th Mountain Division, the hella loose realism unit. So if you are interested in that, I will have some links down below to where you can enlist. So thank you guys for checking this out, and I hope you guys have a good one.